What's good, everyone? It's your girl Amanda Ross, aka Amanda the Author, and I'm back with another video today. We are talking about bad author energy that you should leave behind in 2022 so that 2023 is your best year yet. But before we begin, do you like fantasy, horror, sci-fi? Do you like hearing about books, movies, and TV shows from a writer's perspective? Then you've come to the right place, because that's what I do on this channel. I talk about my books, I talk about everybody else's books, I talk about movies, TV shows, all from my writerly perspective. Everything under the speculative fiction umbrella I talk about. I also dabble in some bookish discourse, publishing industry discussions and discourse. And if you want my take on the tea, then go ahead and subscribe to this channel and ring that bell so you always get notified when I drop a new video. Let's get started. If you haven't seen my 2022 version of this, you can find it here. I'll link it in the cards. But basically, it's just kind of my way of talking y'all through some things to avoid as you embark or maintain your author career. It was really cathartic to create that video, in part because I was giving myself the advice at the same time that I was giving y'all. A lot of the things on this list are reminders for me at the same time as they're reminders for y'all. So the first bit of bad author energy we're going to clear out, we're going to leave behind in 2022, is getting in your feelings when you get a review that you don't like. And I don't want to sit here and just say bad review, because sometimes people will get upset about a critical review, and a bad and a critical review are not the same thing. I will explain that in a second. Or when you get somebody who decides to not finish your book, otherwise known as a DNF. Now, whether that is somebody doing a whole YouTube video about it, or whether that's somebody doing a 15-second TikTok video or posting on Twitter, or even leaving a review saying that they DNF'd it, getting upset because of those things is bad author energy, y'all. And let me tell you why. Like I said, there is a difference between a bad review and a critical review. I would categorize a critical review as what many authors are afraid of, right? This is your 1-2 star where the person is saying it's okay, but they're clocking you for things like character development, pacing, plot. If you have a mystery, did the mystery go? If you have a romance, did the romance, was it giving? Those are the kind of things that you get in a critical review. And if you are somebody who reads your reviews, those are things that could be beneficial for you to be looking out for. If you notice a trend in your reviews, then maybe that's something that you need to fix in your craft. In my opinion, a bad review is something that is left that doesn't address the book's content specifically. It's just I didn't like this book because the author is black, because the characters are black, because I couldn't relate to them, because they made me feel guilty for being white, because the characters are queer, because of this. Things that don't have to do with the meat of the actual story. It's just somebody who says they couldn't relate to the characters, or who just is a jerk. Then you have, again, your DNF reviews where somebody says they didn't finish your book. Sometimes it's because they weren't in the mood to read it. Sometimes it's because they just weren't feeling the story. I personally have done both, right? Regardless of whether you get a critical review, a bad review, or somebody says they DNF'd your book, you should never, under any circumstance, be chasing the person who left you the review. You shouldn't be stalking them online. You shouldn't be stalking them in real life. You shouldn't be berating them. You shouldn't be calling them out on social or sending your friends to call them out on social. You really shouldn't even be in those spaces, especially when they're, particularly when they're reviewing your books. Now, I am not a book reviewer. Again, I am an author. Obviously, the argument is that most authors are readers, so can we not also engage in those reader spaces? Now, again, I'm an author, so I'm not going to sit here and try to answer this question as to whether we should be following reviewers or engaging with their work to begin with. Now, you might be thinking, but somebody left a review and it got me in my feelings. It left me down in the dumps. okay? That happens. That's happened to me. That happens to every creative person, because when you release your art, it is then at the whim of the people. It's subjective. People can tear it apart, they can like it, whatever, right? That's the chance you take when you release your art. So what do? You might be wondering. Take it to the group chat, write it in your journal, talk to your family, your partner, your dog, talk to your therapist. Don't talk about it publicly on Main. Don't berate readers. Don't rant about how, oh man, my book's getting all of these bad reviews. Don't do it. This is one of the reasons why having author friends is super beneficial, because they understand and can commiserate with where you're coming from. Bad author energy number 2 is one that I am guilty of. So we're going to have this is the self-dragging corner of the video. And that is comparing your author journey to others. As I mentioned, this is something that I am guilty of and I struggle with very frequently. I struggle with this, I would say, in all aspects of my life. I'm a chronic comparison gal. It's a thing that I'm working on. But when it comes to comparing your author journey, it is obviously bad for a couple of reasons. So, first of all, it's bad because it can make you want to give up. If you are feeling like, oh man, this person, their book just got optioned, or, you know, they have all these different followers on social and this engagement is out of control. They're posting that they've got thousands of people reading their books. It can make you feel really discouraged. And when you feel discouraged, you might feel like giving up, or you might not take action. It can make it harder for you to be consistent, because you're thinking, well, what's the point? What's the point? I've been doing all of this. Nothing I'm doing is working. They're obviously in the niche or in the space that I want to be in, blah, blah, blah. So that's one of the reasons why comparison isn't good, because it can make you discouraged, which can then lead to you not putting in the work to get where you want to be. So that's reason number 1. And reason number 2 is because it can alienate you from your author peers, both friends and then just author colleagues. I think a way to counteract this is to, I say this often, is to have an idea of what success looks like for you in mind, and maybe put that somewhere that you can see it all the time. Because if you have an idea of what you want for your author career and it doesn't align with what somebody else has, I think it's easier to then ground yourself by focusing on other people's career. You're not going to be focusing on your own, and then it can be harder to hold yourself accountable and look at all the reasons and ways in which you might be holding yourself back. All right, we are at number 3. By the way, if you are hearing rattling and stuff, there's a huge storm happening outside, and I'm trying to get this done before like any potential power outage. So apologies if you hear the windows knocking or something. A storm, okay? So, number 3 is being unprofessional. Authors, this is definitely some bad author energy, and I'm going to tell you what I mean by that, because I don't want everybody going, well, what the fuck does she mean? Okay, so in this case, it is important to note, authors, regardless if you're a self-published or traditional author or hybrid, you are a business. You're a brand, you're a business. And I think if you are somebody who is self-published, then even more so, you need to take yourself and look at yourself as a brand and a business. And with that comes certain ways in which you should probably move throughout the public. So one of the things is, back to point number 1, is not going around and harassing people who didn't like your work is a good thing to stop doing. Maybe getting some kind of media training or having some kind of understanding on how to conduct yourself on social media, proofreading your work, and that includes like your newsletters and things like that. And I think just generally keeping in mind, hey, I'm a business, and moving accordingly. Now, I'm not one of those authors who thinks that you should not talk about important things. I'm not an author who thinks that you can't talk about other people's books. I think you should. You can and you should be talking about these things, especially if they are harmful, especially if, you know, they relate to who you are as a person, who you are as a brand. I think that your audience will appreciate your candor. But I do think that given that you are a business, the way in which you go about talking about these things, the content in which you go about talking about these things is different than if you're on your personal platform. That's what it means when we're talking about being professional. Mostly though, I'm still harping on the first point of don't harass people who didn't like your book, because that's just never a good look. Number 4 is not marketing your book properly. And I mean like purposefully not marketing your book properly. This is not good energy because it's very disingenuous, okay? And yes, there's a certain author who released a certain book who may or may not be an industry plant, who may or may not have misled their readers by posting clips and stuff on TikTok. Yes, that's the type of thing I'm talking about. I'm, again, not trying to get dragged or canceled. You see how many followers I have here. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to protect myself. It is important that you talk about your book correctly. It's important that you have an understanding of the genre, of the age range, of your target audience when you are marketing your book. It's also important to not be misleading and to not market scenes that aren't in the final draft. You know, market this book is like Stranger Things meets Jawbreakers. Oh, that'd be fire. It's important not to be like, this book is Stranger Things meets Jawbreakers when it has nothing to do with either of those properties. The reason why you need to stop doing this is because it shows readers that you don't have an understanding of the thing that you've written, that you don't have an understanding of marketing, and again, it's disingenuous, and it can like put them off if they go in expecting one thing and then they get something completely different. Another part of this is, and it's just, I don't know if this is a personal thing, but marketing your book only on vibes can be okay, but ultimately you're going to have to tell people what your book is about. You're going to have a log line. You're going to have to be able to pitch your book. You're going to have to be able to, if you're doing an interview and somebody asks you, what's your book about? You can't just be like, oh, you know, it's got vibes of Princess Bride and vibes of, you know, a Matisse painting and then a little bit of Nightmare on Elm Street. You can do that when you're working on your first draft, honey, but by the time your book is published, you need to have an understanding of what it is your book is and probably have a pitch to help you market it. Number 5 is thinking that you're better than other authors because you published a certain way. There's still this pervasive idea that self-published indie authors are not as good, not real authors, like trad authors. And there are probably some trad authors who think that. And there are some self-published authors who think, well, you must be dumb, like, publishing trad because you won't have as much control and you'll have to go through this and you'll have to do that and you'll da-da-da. And all of that just kind of alienates all of us at a time when we should be coming together to talk about reforming the publishing industry as a whole. I just think that there's so much that needs to be reformed with the publishing industry, and I think it would be better if we all came together and stopped hating on each other and thinking that if you publish, you know, that if you're self-publishing your book, you ain't nothing because you couldn't hack it as a trad author, you couldn't get an agent, and so you're just doing it as a last resort. And then if you're self-published, thinking, well, you know, you're just doing it old school and you're dumb because, you know, you're not going to get the same, like, people behind you as other authors, so why even try? I just don't think it's smart. Number 6 is perfectionism. Now, don't come for me, because let me explain before you say something. I'm not saying that you should be releasing your book full of errors. And I'm not saying that you should be releasing a book with a cover that is haphazard. What I am saying is release the desire and the push for yourself to be perfect, to never make mistakes, to always be consistent, to even feel the desire to have to write and post and do all this stuff all the time. Sometimes you're not going to feel like it, and that is okay. And don't feel bad if you are like, damn it, I don't feel like writing today. You know, I think there's this idea that if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, and that's not true, because if you're trying to make a living from what you love, there absolutely are going to be times where you have to push through when you don't want to, and that sucks. And in terms of perfectionism, you can always keep learning, you can always connect with other people and get some tips, but don't let perfect be what stops you from releasing your book, marketing your book, networking with other people, right? This whole idea of like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not perfect, or what if I mess up? What if I mess up? I can't do videos because what if I mess up? Or, oh man, I don't want to do an in-person interview because what if I mess up? I would get nervous. Don't let those fears stop you from getting your career together. Like, don't let them stop you from being the author that you know that you can be. And finally, number 7. Number 7 is staying stagnant and not learning. Let's get rid of this whole idea that you don't need to keep learning once you publish a book. Let's get rid of this idea, mindset, subconscious, unconscious, that you don't have to keep learning about the craft of writing, about marketing, about social media tips, about all of that once you publish a book. No. And I say that again, this is another one that I'm saying for y'all as much as I am for me, because it's not that I intentionally stop learning. It's that learning kind of sometimes takes lowest priority for me. And then I go and I actually make time for it, and I think, why the fuck don't I do this more often? We really have to make it a point to continually be learning about our craft, about book marketing, social media tips, newsletters, YouTube, other ways to market your book. And if you're wanting to, let's say, have your book optioned, learning about that process, the whole entire process, could also be helpful as well. You do yourself a disservice when you think that you know everything there is to know. Oh, well, I published a book. I know how to publish a book, but we can always get better at our craft. We can always get better at the things we think that we're good at. And we can certainly get better at the things we think we're not good at. And with so much that goes into being an author, there's bound to be some part of the process that is not necessarily your strong suit. And that's okay, as long as you keep trying to learn and be better. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. It is a bit random, but I do think that if we can all collectively decide that these behaviors don't serve any of us, whether you're a published author, you want to get published, you're on the way to be published, I hope that we can all agree that these behaviors need to stay behind in 2022. If there's anything I haven't added to this list that you think is important, leave a comment below. And thanks for making it this far. I hope you all have a great week. Bye! Talking about having an imperfect cover. Oh, fuck. Alright, so if you haven't seen my 2022 version of this, I'll link it up here below. Wow. That is so hot. Oh my god, I'm about to burn my lip. Regardless if you're publishing traditionally or you're publishing as yourself, wow. Of the age range, comparing yourself to others, being unprofessional,